Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the place where real people share real stories about building a life with more freedom, meaning, and momentum. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've ever felt stuck in a job or maybe trapped in circumstances or maybe just limited by visas, money, or self doubt, this episode is the one for you. Today's guest is Malvern Katsande, an image tech or imaging tech who has come from being a personal carer to running his own freelance imaging business in the UK. And this is a story about reinvention, resilience, and refusing to take no as the final answer. So make sure you subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show from any platform that you're watching this from, because this is the show where we unpack the journeys, the mindsets, and the invisible lessons that will help you design a happier and more intentional existence. Now, welcome to the show, Malvern.
Thank you. Thank you, Prosper. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. I think this is going to be a very exciting journey because I kind of see myself in your journey as well. And I can't wait to unpack, what you've been up to and things of that nature. But before we go deep, I've been told that you're actually a fitness fanatic.
Oh, yes. I recently sort of wanted to work a lot with my mind, because a lot of the life here in the UK is more of work. So I wanted to get into something that, sort of takes me away from working. So although my body doesn't really show for it, I really like getting into the gym. I kind of enjoy hitting a high intensity exercise. All that stuff. I like to remain active. So there's a lot of talk about longevity. So I kind of look that up a bit. I want to be, more energetic as an older adult. So I kind of am, into fitness a little bit, and obviously work and trying to see how things get up, trying to map out the future, and navigate really. So yeah, I'm into fitness. Yeah, do like
Absolutely.
fitness.
You know what I like about that? Not only are you lifting heavy things, but your journey just looks like somebody who just doesn't train their body, but you've also trained your mind for endurance. And so many people miss that part. Yes, they are heavy built, but upstairs, they're basically
Yeah,
going nowhere. So
uh, and a lot of it actually is, I think I was doing it for my mind. You're just a second away from something, catastrophic happening to you. Life is so unpredictable. Anything can happen. There's a lot of stress that goes around, and the best sort of house to create is in your mind. So if you've got, good thoughts, positive attitude, and sort of ways of reinforcing that sort of cycle. And I find, fitness does that. So because we're just fighting so many battles, and you don't know what, somebody can be going through unless you just sort of get into a conversation with them. We're just fighting so many huge battles. So we just need something to keep us going, keep us energized, keep us motivated, Yeah.
absolutely. And talking about fighting battles, let's put the gloves on here, Malvern. Obviously, your life didn't start off with you being an imaging, freelancer and all of the things that you are now doing. Take us back to the beginning. What was life like growing up?
So in addition to that, so the freelance technician thing is just sort of like a part-time thing. I still maintain full work within the NHS, so I have some sort of clinical responsibilities there. I grew up in Harare, grew up in Marlborough for the most of my life. I have still have some friends there. I am a second born, I think a middle child in a family of four boys, and had some trouble sort of relating to ladies until sort of that I got sisters in school and some really close family friends. So that's sort of my family and my I think my upbringing. I tried to do a lot of things. COVID hit when I was supposed to do my A levels, and at that time, I just knew that I needed to progress. I needed to make some sort of impact. I've always wanted to be involved with clinical work. I think my whole career will be in clinical care, and I think ophthalmology in particular, so sort of eye care. I what else? I did. I self-taught literature. My dad used to love books, and he would encourage us to read. And I still love reading. Like you said, I do fitness a little bit. And talk to my friends and family. So that's me, and that's I think a little bit about my upbringing, a little bit of what I do. So I'm an imaging technician, so I basically do eye scans. So we do sort of advanced ophthalmic diagnostics. And at the moment, I'm sort of setting my career off on a tangent. I'm going to electrodiagnostics, so sort of a more clinical side of ophthalmic care, and doing electrodiagnostic tests to sort of monitor, diagnose, and just care for patients with varied eye diseases. So that's what I'm doing now.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us there. Now, you've got a really big passion of eye care and everything else. Maybe walk us through what it was like for you trying to receive that care for yourself while you were growing up.
So yeah, I had some deep eye problems as a child. I'm told by a lot of my family and friends that it still shows now. I still am a patient myself. So I had a very problematic case of allergic eye disease, and at the time we really didn't know what I was allergic to, and it sort of seemed simple to say, well, I've got some allergies, but we don't really know what you're sort of sensitive to, and it took a long time to sort of work that pathway through. And I've been through a lot of ophthalmic practices in Zimbabwe, and in Cape Town. So I sort of it grew with me. I really wanted to give back into a community that I sort of felt I belonged, and I always say to my family as well, I've had a lot of I talk as a young child growing up as an adult, and I didn't see any easier way to sort of get into life then. I remember I got a laser procedure, and while the doctor was doing it, he was teaching me anatomy of the eye and pathway physiology of sight. I've had sort of a lot of names, diseases, seeing for myself, other patients, and I've had some great mentors in ophthalmology as well. So that sort of creates that sets the tone of why I love ophthalmology so much. It's something personal, something that I have, and then something that I've sort of developed by the way I see how other people deliver ophthalmic care.
Absolutely. And along the journey, you would have obviously seen maybe some doctors or some, eye care people, because that was now part of your life. That would have then, prompted you to see them as role models or want to aspire to become like them or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a socialization thing. I really was socialized into becoming it. I really have. Like I say, the surgeon that treated me, I've got some good doctors I know now in Zim, and even here in the UK, and I still was sort of more just fascinated by the way they live their lives, and compared to other specialties of medicine, because I did that little part in nursing, so I kind of was exposed to a fair share of like the majority of specialties in medicine. I find ophthalmologists to be the happiest. The work-life balance is good. Ophthalmology as a practice is sort of elegant. It's a good career. So it's still something that's sort of fascinating even to this day. When I walk in the corridors of my workplace, there's some really cool people I sort of still want to be. I think it's just always having a target in front of me, and I'm trying to aim and shoot at that target.
Mm,
Yeah,
no,
when people see it, it seems as if it's something going, but I just think it's just having some really cool targets to just sort of emulate and shoot for.
absolutely. Now, when I was growing up, there was always this whole Vision 2020. I know that's a way to measure how you see
Yeah,
with your glasses. But didn't that sort of put a cap, when 2020 actually arrived and people started thinking, okay, is there going to be a vision further than that or things like that? I'm just taking off from what you mentioned about the vision and
yeah. Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of small things that actually are kind of fascinating. The whole 2020 vision, it's something that sort of was also kind of confusing for me. So what is 2020? Can we aspire for better? What can I do when it's not 2020?
yeah.
Yeah, and the whole spectrum surrounding that. So and it's not only unique to ophthalmology. You'll find that in all sort of medical language and all sort of disciplines. There's little words that sort of equip the interest, or yeah, that keep you on Doctor Google or yeah,
And things like that. Now, you did also mention, I mean, they didn't know what you were allergic to, especially in the time that you were leaving. But knowing what Malvern as a suburb is like in a hurry, wasn't it just the jacaranda trees that line the streets that would have been part of the problem?
yes, it is part of the problem, but it's a lot more. So immunology is quite a very complex field on its own. The way we study and sort of see allergies. The only unfortunate bit is that in Zimbabwe we didn't have any clinicians or
Mm.
scientists that were sort of more sensitive to that part of immunology. A lot of the also sort of smaller subspecialties in medicine are not as probably practiced, or if they are, they're not as widely accessible in terms of cost. I think cost becomes a prohibitive thing. In my case, I think at the time there wasn't any allergist in the country. I'm told now there is. But I wouldn't be so sure. I probably stand to be corrected. But yes, I was found later to be sensitive to many, many things. The majority of them I've outgrown, and some of them I've had some immunotherapy. But the problem with my allergies is that they only manifested in my eyes predominantly, and sort of in on the skin as well. So um, that's something that also needs to sort of be looked at. So we have a lot of people even now back in Zim across the world that sort of have eye problems, and I've always been told is allergic eye disease. And in the eye clinics, what we mainly do is sort of treat the symptoms, but we're not really dealing with the root cause of what is causing the sort of ocular manifestation. So that's what we discovered later on, that the allergies would present predominantly in my eyes. And then I later developed sort of a visual problem because I used to rub my eyes a lot. And then my corneas, which is the front part of the eye, became very thin, so bulge outwards, and that causes some distortions in the vision. And that disease is called keratoconus. And I have keratoconus. A lot of people do. But yes, problematic allergies is sort of one of the predisposing factors for keratoconus and a lot of other things. But we didn't really have sort of those distinguished pathways, or even if they were there, they were kind of quite prohibitive in terms of cost or access and so on. So the next best option was to travel to South Africa, getting allergy profiling done, and a lot of other things. But those sort of small interdisciplinary teams don't work as well back home because I think largely, I think the biggest problem is cost really, and then the second is sort of even an interest in clinicians in those sort of small areas.
Because it's quite niche and very specific, and like you say,
Yeah,
if there's a cost and access, prohibition, there's not going to
yeah.
be that many people that completely specialize in those particular areas. Now,
Yeah.
speaking of cost and access, was this not a bar to entry? I mean, obviously, given the situation in Zimbabwe at that particular time, I mean, obviously, you would have maybe had to sacrifice something, or maybe your family was well to do in that aspect.
Um, yeah, I was really fortunate. I had my father was still alive at the time. He's passed away now.
Right.
But my dad tried in all his might to make these things available to me. So I really had good care. We would go up and down. If we knew of an eye specialist that was in Zimbabwe, we would go to him. Um, the other thing as well, eye drops, they're quite expensive. But I never really lacked. I had good. I was really well cared for. I think when I was a teenager, I think when my symptoms became actually worse, we had one ophthalmologist refer us to South Africa, where I got some treatment. I think until the bulk of my symptoms sort of were starting to take back seat. So I really was fortunate in that regard that I had power. We didn't have everything, but my father and my mother as well. My parents really sort of worked hard to.
Mm.
And I sometimes think my brother's also deprived of other things to make sure that I got the
Yeah.
best possible care. And I try to remember that now. But yeah, I was kind of privileged to get good care. I think. Yeah, because now I've got really modest vision. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
was quite fortunate.
And thank you so much for taking us there. I'm sorry to hear about your dad. Um,
Yeah.
while you were at school and all of this was happening, obviously this would have not have been easy, having to go to appointments while you also have to be attending school and things of that nature. What was that
Mm.
side of life like?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I think with keratoconus, the biggest problem that sort of starts to happen is the prescription for your glasses is changing constantly. It's not because your actual prescription is changing, it's because the cornea itself, the one that sort of bends the light, is changing. So that it's progressing. Is the peak is getting worse. So how it happens is there's a little peak at the front part of the eye. The clear part of the eye is the cornea that covers the eye. So in keratoconus, it's sort of weak and it bulges outward slightly. So it's a progressive disease. So I remember in school, I would have a new pair of glasses at the start of term, and maybe in the second term, the glasses wouldn't work so well, and there are times where I had to sort of sit in front. I always had to sit in front of the class. And the other times where I couldn't see the extreme sides of the board and I had to sort of stand up and write. But, I had really supportive classmates as well. I had people, because I think the people that you grow up with sort of tend to understand and I had really good friends that would sort of bring material closer to me. I had to have a lot of books. I did have to have every textbook that the school had at home, which again, my parents really strove so much to get. But yeah, it was a struggle in some respects. And obviously, because I had my eyes constantly pink or red, had other kids worry about it. And I think it really affected a little bit of my esteem in some regards, but not very much. I didn't really feel different because I had, other learners in the school wouldn't make me feel any different. And at home as well, I wasn't treated any different, but I did have some challenges. And obviously, like you said, attending hospital appointments, they become problematic when I was in high school because I was at a boarding school and I had to come back frequently, to come home at the weekend or, every other week to be seen. That took away a lot of my classroom time. Yeah, well, when I was in primary school, it wasn't so bad because I used to go maybe in the morning to the doctors and then in the afternoon in class. But it became problematic when I was in high school to a point where I had to actually transfer schools altogether. Um, yeah, when I was, I think I was supposed to be in Form 3 or Year 10 equivalent or something like that. Um, yeah, and at the time as well, my parents sort of felt that I missed so much of school in 1 year that I had to retake a year. But yeah, it did work out in the end. Um, I, I didn't think it was any necessary now, but yes, it helped. It helped with catching up on things, learning concepts and mastering them. But yeah, it is a struggle to also learn with some kind of health challenge or not only eyes in particular, but anything. Yeah.
You know what I'm gathering from all of this, Marvin?
Mm.
In life, you might think that things are happening to you, but they're actually happening for you. Now,
Yes.
just that
Yeah.
little tidbit of information about you having to retake a year, it actually works out well in your timeline, because had you not done that, COVID would have struck while you're actually doing your most formidable year in high school. That would have been your form
Yes.
six then.
Yes, 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 yes. That's the case. Yes, it would have happened that way, and I also don't think I would have I also wouldn't have thought I would have taken decisions in the way that I would have done, because I like, for example, when I enrolled for nursing, it wasn't so much to the pleasure of my parents, because I thought I would do. My older brother is an academic, for example. He has just he had his master's when he was 25.
Wow.
Um, so he went straight from high school, went into to do his undergraduate, and then went over to do his master's straight away. And I thought my parents sort of had that sort of route for me as well. You finish your high school, you do your A levels, and like you said, if that had happened that way, I probably wouldn't have been where I am now, because the timelines wouldn't have matched, or I wouldn't have realized things in a certain way. Because I think there's a lot of factors that sort of contributed to how my social mobility turned out to be eventually. COVID was one of them. The way of learning in COVID, the way that the world changed so much, and we needed to sort of think about key workers. Not that any other job is more important than others, but I think at the time I was really thinking about wanting to get into a career where, if anything, is sort of pandemic proof. It's a key job. That's what one thing that I wanted to sort of get into. So, like you said, if I had things any other way, I wouldn't have probably been where I am. I don't know where I would have been, but it would have been certainly not in imaging or working in eye care. I wouldn't know, but it would have been different, maybe.
Absolutely. So you've already hinted that you went on to take on nursing, and that then became somewhat of a path, even though it's not nearly as close to the eyes as you would have wanted to be.
Yes,
But at least you
yeah.
could see your way through. So walk us through what was going on during that time, and what that has become, or what you have become of that.
Yeah, so nursing was a really fantastic time in my life. I learned a lot of skills. I think a lot of them I still sort of apply till now. I learned to have a heart of a nurse. So nursing is predominantly a ladies' profession. So you learn to have those sort of good motherly um, qualities. Yep. So nursing was really good. I actually wanted to become an eye nurse after, and then sort of work out what I would want to be, or an immunology nurse, I think. But I really enjoyed my time in nursing. I was a devoted student. So one thing that actually led me to nursing was, one part of my journey, I had a corneal ulcer. They tried me on contact lenses to see better, and the contact lenses would scratch the surface of my eye, and I had a corneal ulcer, or a little sore on the cornea, the front part of my eye, and I needed to be in hospital for that. So I was admitted in hospital, and I saw student nurses. So this had happened a lot earlier, but I used to see student nurses, and some of them would sort of teach me my maths, because I had to do some sort of schoolwork while I was in hospital. And when I was at that point, after the O levels, in between the A levels and COVID hitting, I thought that was, I think, one of the other things that sort of influenced me to go into nursing. I just had sort of those sort of memories of and student nurses on the apprenticeship program got paid, and that was independent. And I thought, and as well, nursing is a tool for social mobility. You can take a nursing qualification anywhere, and I thought, well, this could work. So I enrolled. Yeah, I had some great time, fantastic time, learned a lot, did a lot as well. Yeah, but I really enjoyed my time in nursing, and ultimately I used that as a stepping stone. But I must mention at this point that I had a brother, one of my cousin brothers, who's here in the UK, who really also wanted to help us. So dad had passed away, and we were really thinking about what happens to us in the future. And at the time, a lot of people were migrating from Zimbabwe to come to the UK as care workers. And I took that route. I didn't see the ends to it, but my conviction was I am so good at my nursing that if I take it anywhere, if I take it to the UK, somebody will recognize it, and it will take me somewhere. That was my thinking. So yeah, I like I said, I've been really fortunate to just have a lot of people support me throughout my journey, and then all of these accidental or incidental findings that I make towards a career in eye care has sort of been supported by that army of people just around me. I had a lot of church as well. It was a good place to push forward. I had a lot of people support from church. A lot of people prayed for me. They still pray for me now. I had a lot of people just sort of encourage me. And yeah, so the thinking was I didn't abandon the nursing qualification, but a lot changed with COVID because I was working on the front line. We had to work as part of the program because it was an apprenticeship program. Um, COVID exposed a lot of inequalities in healthcare, and a lot of nurses were migrating. And I wondered if nurses qualified, and some of them were respected so much, are leaving, what will happen to my future? So I was kind of scared, and then use that to take the next step. But yeah, that's how it happened. But I think I digressed too much. The question was how was nursing? But nursing was fantastic. I really loved it. I was sad to leave. Um, will I get back into nursing? Probably not, but but
We,
it is a great career. Yeah.
we needed that in order to get to the next level, right? And I mean, obviously,
Yes. Yeah.
in the way things sort of looked like that. So, with what you're saying, of course, you would have had support, family, and you've had this qualification that would have made it easy for you to maybe migrate. But a lot of people just think it's that easy. You just go present your passport and then they stamp it and they're like, "Hey, welcome. You can now live there in the UK and
No, no.
Scotland."
Yeah, I think another thing that I did mention was there was a bond scheme.
Right.
So the deal that we had with the government at the time was, well, we were going to train and work for the government for an equal number of years to training. So you work. The program was 3 years, and so you had to work for the government for 3 years, and then that satisfies the bond. And then at the end of it, you get a verification of some sort. So if you want to work anywhere across the world, your regulator has to write a letter to verify your character, your work, and everything. And because COVID had sort of made a lot of people to leave, the government had to institute measures, and I think rightly so. They needed to sort of have a long-term retention plan, and they had to make changes to the bond, the conditions surrounding the bond. And I thought that progress in that in those kind of circumstances was also going to be very slow. Um, and I kind of looked at all the sort of avenues that I could have explored if I'd stayed. Um, and also they looked quite minute, and then they weren't probably promising to be as fast as I wanted them to be. And I just thought maybe I could leave and try something else. So yes, I understand even now a lot of nurses have satisfied the bond, not only nurses, doctors. Doctors also have to be regulated, but they have to get a letter from their regulator as well to work anywhere in the world. I think it's becoming more difficult and more difficult because governments across the world have to retain their skills. Otherwise, they will just become training grounds for people to train and leave. So I think there's no worse evil, but it was one of the things that also as well influenced uh, my decision to sort of leave. But you're right, it's not as easy as that. I just mentioned this whole story about verification as one part of the problem. And even if you were to get it straight away, social mobility doesn't work quite like that in a country like the UK in particular, or any other country. It's not as we imagine it to be. I think when we're back home, we have this utopic dream of how things work, how the systems completely work. Um, the other thing as well, if you're an internationally trained, you have to work a lot wait to prove your worth, and you may not necessarily end up in the environments that are deserving of your skills as well, and that can be problematic. Another way of cutting it, I thought if I would go into their system earlier, I'll be able to sort of navigate and make way out of, create a career of sorts in that sort of way. Yeah, there've been some rewards by having that mindset as well, but there've also been some losses. So Like you say, it's not as easy. It's not just stamping a passport or getting a verification letter. It's a lot. It's a lot more to
Mm.
to just
And,
getting an approval.
you
Yeah,
know, in our culture, we do have a statement because not my agwendwe, you know, where your mom is
absolutely.
not.
Yay. Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're on your own. So I'm just, envisioning you are coming from a space where, as you have said, everything seemed like you were well taken care of, and people really were in, on your side amongst all of the things. Now you're in a whole new place, in a whole new country, in a
Mm.
whole new postcode, in a whole new temperament, and in a whole new climate. What was the most confusing or maybe frustrating part of just navigating the system as a migrant?
Yeah, so again, my story has so many twists to it. I really am thankful for that brother of mine because he sort of initially absorbed all those big shocks. Um, so when I moved from Zimbabwe, I didn't move straight to England. I went to live in Scotland, and while I was looking for work there, not looking for work, while I was waiting to get into work, I had to stay with my brother, the one I mentioned earlier. He's been really sort of supportive. He really sort of absorbed a lot of those sort of stresses. But then I eventually got into work as a support worker, and I think that was a really big difference. I think that's when I started to feel the changes now, and I quickly wanted to navigate into a way to get back into sort of clinical work based on the experience in nursing that I'd had. And by the time I left Zim, I had done a lot of my higher order rotations, so to speak. So I was almost finished. I was almost qualified. So I think my thinking then was that of a complete, almost complete nurse. So I was wanted to get back into clinical work, and I think that's when I sort of faced the biggest challenges. So the first challenge was I really like to use my mind a lot. I really like to think, apply, solve problems, and you do get that in social care, but in more senior roles and responsibilities. And so I sort of saw that ceiling, and I think that's when the problem started. Not the problem with the work. I really love the work. I think I looked after the clients that I were entrusted to my care very fairly. I was really good, and I think we had a really good relationship. But I was just not feeling fulfilled in terms of like um, being utilized, or all the skills of everything that I've ever learned in the past being sort of coming to use. I've learned a lot of great skills in care. I did that for 2 years, almost 2 years. I learned how to communicate effectively, how to write reports and things. I did sort of improve that time as well. And in that time, I used to study part time for the course that I use for work now. I took a course in neuroanatomy, very complex course, but I really wanted to get my mind to work, so I sort of enjoyed that. But that was part of the times that I really sort of felt some hardships. Um, and as well, yeah, the thinking about the skin color and what you can contribute, or you not being any more than what you are to serve a specific task. Yeah, that could be hard as well. So
Mm.
yeah, I've had to sort of think of ways of getting back into that clinical space, and I think that was the hardest bit in my time here, trying to sort of work that out. And
Mm. I
that's
can I can
yeah,
only imagine,
yeah,
it's sort of like that. I mean, I've been in Australia going on 14 years now, and the first couple of
mm,
years I literally didn't even know how to write my own name. You
yeah,
can
yeah,
imagine.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you start finding yourself, and then while you're in that sort of space, you discover a new you that maybe you never thought existed. So you change jobs, cities. What did that teach you about starting over and the person that you become?
But yeah, so you have to really be. I think I would go back to. I really like to digress a lot. There's a story in the Bible that sort of inspires me. I'll gravitate back to the Bible. There's a story when Elisha was dying. He calls a king and he says, "Shoot an arrow outside the window." He does and says that's the arrow of deliverance. And then he says, "Shoot an arrow to the ground." and he shot an arrow to the ground. But the Bible says Elisha was angry with him because he only done it 3 or 4 times. He was angry, and he says he could have smitten 4 or 5 times or more. And what that story teaches me is how we meet opportunity with so little effort. So I've changed cities twice now. So left Scotland, moved to London. The pace of life is very different. And from London, I've moved to Bicester, where I am now, working in Oxford. So I've had a real good mix of a quiet life in Scotland, a really fast-paced life in London, and then sort of medium pace here in Oxford. And I think we really need to be open to new possibilities. But then again, you never know. Opportunities are only come suddenly, and it's only how we meet opportunities. Um, a lot of opportunities come to us, but we miss them because of the effort that we're going to reciprocate to that opportunity. Um,
Mm,
yeah,
absolutely. I quite
and
like that story that you've just given reference to.
mm,
It sort of is a mirror to your own life, and as much as you haven't stopped, you could have stopped at saying, "Oh, woe is me, my eyes are stopping me from this," but you just kept going and going. You could have stopped and said, "Ah, now that the anchor in my life, my father has passed away. Now I can't move on." But you could have stopped at so many barriers, but you just
mm,
kept going. Now, you've now even sort of gone on from personal care work to now there's clinical imaging that we're now going to sort of
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about. Do you
You,
feel like you've sort of found your stride now, or are you still Elisha on his journey?
I still am on my journey. There's something, I'm on the cusp of something. I'm not sure if I could. I'm just sort of navigating a few other things now. Hopefully, I will write back to you in a few weeks and say, "Oh, it worked out." But I am continuously moving. I'm on the cusp of something as well. But it's always. I think we work best when we move. Um, we really
Mm,
need to keep moving. You can't get there. I think I've got there in terms of satisfaction, in terms of my role and the time that I have. Because one of the other things that you face as a migrant, I think I wouldn't be sure, but if it's the same scenario in Australia, the one that we face here in the UK is that you have to redeem your time. So the way you work up is the more time you get. So obviously, when I started off as a care worker, to make as much money probably as I would make now, I needed to utilize most of the days on the calendar. And working, progressing roles and bands within the NHS and so on gives you a little bit more time and flexibility in terms of how you can control your time. So I still am not finished. We're never finished products. In nursing, they say Nightingale says that we are never finished nurses. So we
mm,
never we never really are finished. Yeah, I'm still going into like I said, I'm now more interested into because I've sort of done ophthalmic imaging diagnostics, quite complex diagnostics, and I feel really good with that. But I really want to get into something more stimulating. So the step up is doing electrodiagnostics, sort of a more scientific or clinical science route. I think the goal is sort of working to become a clinical scientist. So that's what I want to eventually end up as. So we still have to walk. We still have to march over.
oh, absolutely.
4 years.
See, but the
Yeah.
thing is, if you're going somewhere, you to not put the address of where you are in the GPS, you put the address of where you're headed to. And usually
The
for
end in sight.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the human spirit and everything else, we're sort of working towards some sort of success. Now, I'm going to ask
Mm.
you, what does success mean to you? Does it mean money, time, friendships? Because all of that is encompassed in your story, or is it just peace of mind? Or does success mean you being able to deadlift or lift heavy things since you're a fitness fanatic?
Yeah, so I think success for me is fulfillment. I've had a mentor earlier on in my life. I think we need to talk separately about mentors. Like I said, I've had a lot of people mentoring me, and I've had a lot of mentors help me sort of make big strides in terms of both my career and the way I think. And earlier on in Zim, I had a mentor. He used to say fulfillment is greater than profit. So I really feel good when I make that difference in patients' days or patients' lives. Even from my nursing days, I've had a lot of um, profound relationships where I sort of felt really happy about making a change. I only wish that the money would reflect with that. But success for me is fulfillment. I really want to get to that height of that sort of where I make that big difference in pathways and patient care that I actually feel fulfilled. And that I think that always sort of makes me feel that ounce of success. So when I have done or when I do something, or when I progress a role, I feel a little bit of fulfillment and I feel like it's one step towards the goal, and that's how I measure my success. Not so much the money, it's because it's not there, but but it's fulfillment. I really like to be fulfilled, so I find fulfillment success. I find making
Absolutely.
that
And
little
for those that are
difference.
watching and are thinking maybe I should be sending Malvin a text message on WhatsApp, he has mentioned, the money hasn't arrived yet. So just hang in there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's yeah, well, because clinical work in general does until you, I think, in the very end stages, the most in the most senior roles, it doesn't pay as much as other sort of roles. Junior solicitors make a lot of money. I think comparatively, when you look at all our colleagues in engineering, I have a lot of friends who have sort of done other things, whom we went to high school with, or who've gone into different things. They obviously get a lot more money for what they do. Um, I was
Yeah, no,
looking
that
at
was
job.
just to protect you from the people that would say,
Oh
oh,
right, okay. Oh right, yes, yes. So I'm very serious. Sometimes I take things so literal, but yeah, um, yeah. Clinical
don't
work.
hustle him yet. He hasn't arrived.
I'm not there yet. Yes, give me some time, but yeah, we can always work something out. Yeah.
Good stuff. So, somebody might be watching this and saying, I know your story is inspiring, but I don't think anybody can do it. You know what I mean? Maybe your situation, your upbringing was a little bit different. I didn't have any of that. So I have to actually start from scratch. And I have all these black tax that I have to, be partisan of and look after and the
Mm,
whole family,
mm.
as you know, what our sort of, families are like, what would you say to
Mm.
somebody who feels that their situation is too hard?
Um, that's a very important thing to say, Prosper. Thank you very much. I think, um, like the text says in the Bible, God gives us that which we're able to carry. And I think always our circumstances, there's always a way out. It's just about resilience. It's not so much about what we are doing, but it's just about doing it over and over again. Now, the first thing is when you realize that you are not where you want to be and you need to be somewhere, find the people that are where you want to be. Ask them and they will guide you. So you have a lot of mentors. And what a mentor does is he will speak up in the room that you cannot speak up for yourself. So there are times when I've had problems with money, especially funding. As you would understand, working and paying school fees is very difficult. So I think I was like everybody else, probably in the UK. Probably not so much of obligations back home, but I still have to. You still have to participate in some way. So it's a very complex thing to navigate. But then, if I'm a believer, and I think that works so well in my journey, God has got riches. It says in the text that God shall supply every of your needs according to His riches and glory. But the thing is, Christians like to say things, but they don't want to test them out. God
Mm.
wants you to test him, test him faithfully. Stand up in a position and test all the scriptures. I've got one of another preacher that I really like so much. His mother had a Bible with across the text that he would write a T, and he asked his mother why there are T's in the Bible, and his mother said, "These are the areas that I've tested." So to answer that question is a very big problem. But the first is, if you're a believer, you have to test your faith. Second thing, get mentors. You need a mentor. So it's not all about the money. The first thing is the mindset. Get to plot where you want to be. You don't need money for that. You don't need money to know where you want to be. You don't need money to try and establish relationships. Like I reached out to my mentor on LinkedIn, like how we started talking, messaged him there, and he said to me, because I was in Scotland at the time, he says, "Oh, you can come to Moorfields." He's one of the nurse consultants there. I hadn't asked him whether I could mention his name on this podcast, but he invited me, and he said to me, "Come to Moorfields, this eye hospital in London." And I was working in Scotland, and I could have said, well, because they said to me, it was Monday. I called him, and they said to me, "Come on a Wednesday." And I didn't have the money. I think I had very few pounds. So I took an overnight coach from Scotland to London, and I showered in the gym. Nobody saw that I showered in the gym. Don't look like your problems. So I didn't look like my problems. I showered in the gym, showed up. I didn't say I didn't sleep or I was in an overnight coach. It was so cold because Scotland is very cold. I really, there are things within our reach. The more of the story, I can say a lot of things. There are things within our reach that we can do. If you're here already, or if you've had a journey where you've traveled, you're already in the diaspora, that's a bonus. So you've got a starting point. You've got somewhere to start. Now, I took a coach. Trains are expensive. The plane is very expensive. I took a coach, got there. I had Greg's. I didn't even have like proper lunch or anything. I had Greg's while I was there, like Baker's in Zim equivalent, just a bun and Coke. That's what my dad used to say on a bad day, have a bun and Coke. You only need $2 in Zimbabwe to have a bun and Coke. So yeah, have a bun and Coke. You can afford a bun and Coke. Even if you can't, speak to someone. The thing is, don't keep things to yourself. I don't like this conversation so much because it takes away from the potential of what you already have, and then you don't see what you already have. You're always looking for what you don't have, and you always have problems with that. Because if you're not going to see what you already have, you're always going to find problems with what you don't have. So there's something that you definitely have that can push you forward. You could be caring for a lot of people. The blessings come from caring for our family. So you when a black text, you still need to help out. But along that big chunk of things, that big chunk of responsibilities, there is a way, and I think that's what we sometimes don't find always are not opening to see, that we always find we look at all other things and we don't look at that thing that we can actually do.
Mm,
So
I like
it's
that.
free. Yeah.
I like that a lot. And from what you're saying, you don't necessarily need perfect conditions to change your life. I mean, the reality
No,
is most
no.
transformations just start in the messy, uncertain, financially uncomfortable conditions.
Positions, yes.
And I
Yes.
want to encourage whoever's watching right now that no matter what it is that you're going through, I want you to actually be paying attention and, in fact, documenting all of that, because one day you might also have a good story to tell on the Online Prosperity Show.
Yes, yes, definitely. And a lot, like you say, a lot of the things that you really need, a lot of the groundwork, I really discovered that doesn't actually need money. So,
Absolutely.
like I said, the research or needs very little money, may not need as much money, but needs very little. Research, create a profile. Social media is, the big thing now. We can use it to our benefit and to our detriment. Reach out to people, have conversations. You can knock on 1,000 doors. They may not open. Not all of them may open, but one may, and you never know unless you try. So, just go for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
Malvern, I don't know about you, and I mean, obviously, you can answer this if you cannot answer this if you don't want to, but you introduced to us a character, and that character was your dad, who obviously was there for you through thick and thin and everything else that came along with it. And you did mention that he's no longer with us. Now, my question now is, if he would see the man you've become, what would he be saying about Marvin today?
Hmm. Um, that's a very good question. Thank you. I don't know. I always wonder. So my dad was very difficult to please. So, so I remember one time because I got my first stipend when I was working at Parry, and when I got that when I got my first paycheck, because I think it came backdated for 3 months because they were still processing them, but the paperwork and things. And but I got my first paycheck and went to him and I said, I really want to buy you something. Just allow me to buy it. He never accepted, but I did for my mom. And I always wonder. I say this because I don't know, he would have been, he wasn't difficult, but he would have been, I think he would have been proud to some degree. But I always wonder if he would even be accepting of the fact that he wasn't unaccepting as that it was hard, but it was just seeing that his child is becoming into something. He really hadn't he still saw me as this sort of little boy, maybe still needing consultation fees or still needing to get to he still sort of saw me as somebody he needed to provide for. And so I wonder now what he would have said, but I think he would have smiled. Certainly, he would have said, he always had a statement that he said, "Oh, the Almighty God is a good man, and he looks so overall, including you." And he would have said a lot of things, but he probably would have smiled the most. I wonder. I think now, it's navigating the 20s that I think actually a lot of men need their fathers or need father figures. So yeah, it's mostly now that I've got so many questions for him, but it's not possible to ask him. But I don't know. That's a short answer. I could say a lot of things, but not quite sure. But he would have smiled probably. He would have said he's proud. I think he would have he would have said keep on. He would have said if that's what makes you happy, do it. I think he would have. Yeah, he would have probably said all of those things. But
I'm sure he would have
yes,
been, Marvin. I'm
yeah,
sure he would have
yeah,
been, because what's powerful about your story? It's not just you navigated everything and you just did what any person would have done, but it's just you didn't wait for anybody to give you permission or for confidence to show up first. You know what I mean? You just went straight for whatever it is that was in front of you at that particular time. And
mm,
you, like they say, you came, you saw, and you conquered. And I thank you for having taken the action, even though you were not certain, that showering in the gym or whatever it is, that will make for a good story one day. But it's when you are doing it and things are happening that we don't quite see that this is the making
yeah,
of the person. So I really appreciate your journey and you sharing with us on the Online
yeah.
Prosperity Show
Thank you very
today.
much. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that the big thing about this is that for me, it's just been the faith journey. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just see the first step, and then just go for it. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Now,
yeah, just
you
go
also
for it.
did mention you had role models and you also had a lot of mentors that you kept, referencing to here. Now, somebody
Mm.
could be watching this and they look up to you based on your story and who you've become, and they might consider you as somebody they might also be able to learn from. Where can people find you on the internet so that they can maybe continue to check out your journey and maybe
Yeah.
see how they can be
Uh,
supported?
Yeah, the only thing is I'm not very active on socials or LinkedIn as my I'm always on LinkedIn as Malvern Katsande. You can always find me there. You can write to me an email. I will always respond to an email. I could give you my number, I don't know, but I don't have any sort of active social medias. I'm not on Instagram. I do have a very old Facebook account. I've stopped like other sort of
All right.
social media. So you
They'll
can
find.
find me. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best place to reach me. Drop me a message. I will definitely respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can write me an email. My email is tech at Malvern, my name, Malvern, Malvern Eye Imaging .uk. You can get me on there as well. Yeah, but I think those are the best ways to get to me. Quite simple to get to, but LinkedIn is the best and fastest way to get to me.
Not a
Yeah, you can
problem.
definitely get
Man,
to me.
what you just did was really open up to a lot more people that may not have had role models or may not have being able to see that things can be possible for them based on what it is that they're seeing, because fish do not see the water that they're swimming in. And,
Yeah.
representation matters. So I really applaud you for the journey that you've taken and everything else that comes along with it. But now that you've brought us into your world, what's next? What are you working on, or what should we be excited about that we can now be on the lookout and be, supportive of your journey?
Yeah, like I said, I really want to get into clinical, so the clinical science bit. So I have just finished my qualification, sort of ophthalmic technician work. I want to continue that, but I want to sort of take off on a tangent. I want to do electrodiagnostics, continue with the small fitness things. I don't know about um, creating. I really want to talk to a lot of young people. Um, I really want to get into sort of talking to people. Not only it's only just using the small tricks that I've used and the methods that I've implemented to get into some sort of career and you know launch something that I can sort of survive on. I really want to talk to a lot more young people that sort of feel that they don't have a purpose or they're not sort of finding that direction. I don't have the answers. I'll just give them the strategy. The first thing is obviously getting a mentor, doing the research, and talking to people. I think that's as far as it goes. Yeah, so I'm really, really wanting to get into a few things. Yeah, I'm not very sure about what else, but I think this is what's just close by. I'm not a very smart person, so what I do is I hang around the smart ones. So I
Uh,
hang. I really, really try to hang around the smart ones. I always want to, reach out to people that don't be the smartest one in the room. I mean, just don't be. Go to
absolutely.
places where you don't feel, yeah, you're the
No,
smartest. And that's what I'm definitely going to get into. Talk to a lot more people. I don't know, but I really want to get into more sort of semi-informal speaking engagements.
yeah,
Yeah, just
absolutely.
focus on that career a little bit. Yeah, get that.
Absolutely. And Marvin, I can't thank you enough for the time and effort that you
Thank you very much. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
bring.
I think there's a lot to say. I was digressing a lot. I'm told that I mentioned a lot of things in one go and really sort of get so overwhelmed
It,
trying
it,
to logically arrange a lot of
it
thoughts.
will
But
it will
yeah,
make for a good book. It will make for a good speaking career, like you have mentioned. But Tatenda Shukuru, thank you so much for your time today.
thank you, Prosper. Thank you very much. Thank you, my brother. Take care.
Bye, bye for now. Now, and
Bye. Bye.
for those that are watching, that brings us to the end of today's episode of the Online Prosperity Show. Now, if this conversation resonated with you, especially if you're navigating change, migration, or maybe career reinvention, I encourage you to maybe rewatch this episode and see if there's any nuggets that you might have missed along the journey. Or if you got everything that you wanted, why don't you share this episode with somebody who might just need a glimpse of hope right now? And if somebody has shared this episode with you, the next time you see them, just give them a very big hug, because they really care about you. And while you're at it, just subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because you don't want to miss out on any of these fantastic stories that we have going. Because in the next episode, I've just been told, we're going to be diving into ideas that will help you design a happier, more intentional existence, and not just a successful one. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this information today. Because I think Malvin's story and his experience are just a beacon for so many of us that are looking for hope out there. Because sometimes the only thing that's standing between your old life and your new one is just tenacity and one brave decision. Bye for now.